Hello, I'm Rooks' Fun, and welcome to episode 52 of Mindful Drawing Practices. This week we'll explore the corner as our centering device that we can develop a technique from in order to bring our attention into this active space of drawing and then allow our attention to fill the page and start to form the space within and around these figures and shapes to establish a two-dimensional territory that connects our breath with our hand, that connects our mind with this paper through whatever medium you choose, pen, pencil, crayon. Once we've inhabited the simpler dimensions of a 2D territory, of the play between shapes, of forming a corner and having space slowly emerge as part of this action and mindful practice, we can then extend the corners into 3 dimensions to tease out possible forms and volumes and see where our exploration of this map, this new territory that we're creating together in our practice of attention and awareness, will lead us. So grab your favorite sketch pad, a pen or pencil, anything you like to draw with, and let's draw together. A square, a triangle, just an L shape of a corner, just something that we can really bring our attention to in how we might craft that moment with drawing. So in the corner, there are many ways that different people will draw a square, whether that's going around the perimeter or assembling it from kind of 2 L's, or perhaps making a U or a C and capping it off. And in that simple act, we can bring in our attention and kind of play and explore that space of just how we might make a corner and what that could translate into in other shapes. It doesn't have to be from a square. It could be a sharper, more acute corner, or something wider, more obtuse, but just using a little bit of time in the warm-up to bring our attention to how we tend to draw that. I think I've done this exercise so many times with students that I don't know how I tend to draw it anymore. But I remember my kindergarten teacher always being a little upset with me for writing my letters in a strange way. I'm sure I do it backwards. But once you had a little time to get into thinking about what that corner might be for you, we can play for a moment in how it forms a larger, recognizable shape. Diamond, square, hexagon. Something that you feel comfortable moving through with the drawing, and something with maybe just enough complexity to bring in that attention to what's happening right there on the page as you track the lines around and help them reconnect to bring the shape together. Or if you want to keep the shape more open, to help them have a consistency of proportion and relationship. So this warm-up just being a catalog of possibilities, and as we transition from here into a longer format drawing, choosing one as a place to start, knowing you can always change along the way. Maybe just closing your eyes and letting some of your fingertips drift over the paper for a moment to bring that attention into the space here, connecting between us and the paper, a medium, and our fingertips that do so much of the work here, becoming familiar with its texture and its boundaries and how we will interact with it. And then if you would like, keep your eyes closed or let them be open and begin to form that shape made of corners. At first, just getting comfortable with the movement on the page, knowing that if we don't quite complete our shape as it may be in the textbook, we can try again with the next one and use a stabilizing breath to kind of set us up in our body and on the page to have that calm attention to how we form a shape or bring space into that emptiness of the paper, beginning to populate both the inner void formed by the corner as well as the outer void that lives in between each shape, and just kind of scattering them at first arbitrarily around the page with variable size, maybe even playing some with the orientation, letting them have a bit of freedom to each moment as we enter into forming those corners and carving out a little bit of space with whatever shape you're working with. Taking a good deep breath in between each new location. Maybe a couple breaths if you like, just to stabilize and center. And then as you draw out the breath, draw out the space, forming those corners. Letting it drift a little around the page. Bringing your awareness into how the pen or pencil turns or repositions to bring together individual line segments, these slowly tracing vectors into a recognizable form, a shape on this paper context. And here in our reduced complexity of dimensions, working mostly on a two-dimensional surface, the flatness of the paper, the imperceptible kind of depth to the line as it marks over the fibers or presses them in, depending on your medium. Being mostly two-dimensional for us, letting some of that complexity of our volumetric, three-dimensional, spatial inhabitation just kind of drift back with this more simple, calming action. Time still tracking along with us, but connecting more in the space of action than as a measurement. Each breath between actions, each release with a shape or a line, just passing. And if your space becomes a little bit crowded, you're welcome to change size, make shapes smaller, let them overlap, just inhabiting that technique and the single presence of forming the corner around some space with the now expanding consequence and connection between elements as they must interact with each other here on the single page. And take a few shapes here just to really align the body now that we've been drawing a while, connect in with the breath, and prepare to reintroduce some of that third dimension, the perceived depth of form extending from shape. Taking a breath in and letting it just fall out as you work your way around the perimeter. Some moments at the end of the shape for the breath to just be empty. And breathing in again when it's comfortable. And letting it fall out. I notice this deeper inner connection to the breath prompts my hand to move more smoothly and kind of round or transition through that corner less abruptly. Smoothing a little bit the shape, smoothing some of my attention to a continuous flow. And if you need to breathe again while drawing your shapes, maybe they're larger or more complex, let your body breathe. No need to hold the breath or cause tension while drawing, but having that presence to let it keep breathing at a regular, relaxed pace, prompted by our initiation of each new action. A back and forth between our control, our input to the system of breathing, and the body's own autonomous systems oscillating between our awareness and our background. And as this space is now filling with elements to form that kind of field or background condition, we can begin to explore it and inhabit it, perhaps tease or draw out from it some degree of depth and volume in the simplest sense by choosing a corner of one shape and guiding the line towards a corner of the next. And if we track to a new corner, we can guide them in sequence or at random, just to begin linking the corners of one shape to the other. And in the presence of drawing and this exercise of attention, it can often be challenging and perhaps frustrating or uncomfortable to try to get a line to go straight from one corner to another. And some teacher along the way I remember saying, suggested if you just make the line a little squiggly to begin with, and it still connects the 2 points, it'll look like it gets from one corner to the other, and it won't feel quite as frustrating. So feel free to let that connection reach out on a bit of a wavier path. Doesn't have to be deliberately deformed, but just softer, freer to arc or transition across the space. No need to predetermine what might happen as we connect the corners. Perhaps we end up with twists and folds, or clear definitions of volumes. And that is all part of either the exploration or some degree of existing experience. But if you feel yourself giving a lot of intention or guidance to the forms, trying to see them as something, perhaps practicing a bit of letting go there, letting the first corner connection just move between 2 points. And that may establish some unexpected twists, folds, a release from finding the form as a recognizable object into this in-between land of dimensions, a flat paper that gives us visual access to a potential three-dimensional looking form. And in each one of these lines, the closer the proximity of the shapes, the perhaps more attention we can bring to the forming of the line as it crosses a short distance and lets us have some of that control. But as you feel comfortable with the technique of connecting these corners, you may experiment with tracking further distances, leveraging our attention to the breath, and our attention to the way we hold the pen, steady and firm, but not rigid. Our attention to the way we move our whole arm, our wrist, stabilizing the connection between our fingertips and our arm. Either drawing towards as we cross the space, as I begin here, or you can work in a drawing out, away, to help bring awareness to that movement out across the space. And if you're playing with these longer lines that may track fully across the paper, what do you begin to notice? If you use your breath as the guide for those lines, can that begin to establish some of the rhythm of the wobble that helps them straighten? Does the longer line bring discomfort or distraction? Or does it let you in deeper to the intention of the action floating across the space? Or does it begin to open up or close down in your presence? And to recognize or witness that in a feeling through the act of drawing. And if you like, to inhabit it, or perhaps to let it change into a different feeling. You want to move back to more constructed formal connections, seeing the volumes. Feel free to let that guide you. If you just like to go back to drawing corners and shapes, feel free to let that guide you. Space here on the page, opening up possibilities for techniques, possibilities for practicing our awareness of ourself and our action through drawing here. In the last 5 minutes or so that we have, continue in the motions that you've established, or feel free to take some time and let your eyes drift over the paper for a moment, see what has emerged. There are probably spaces of clarity and others of ambiguity. And feel free to take some time to perhaps retrace some of your edges, reform some of the corners that catch your attention, to call out new shapes or volumes, or register what attracts your own spatial and visual attention. Perhaps using the corner to further refine the edges of volumes that start to give presence to form and space, even from this two-dimensional plane of paper and this one-dimensional pen or pencil marking that tracks across it. We can access great depths to a world imagined or perceived or represented through these tools that we've crafted over the many centuries, allowing us a space of expression, a space of release, play or exploration, whatever drawing might be for you. Each new moment of the line, a new opportunity for imagining or establishing presence or an idea, or just practicing our space of connection between action and presence. I think it's always nice to come to a close with a few deep repositioning breaths. Welcome to keep drawing as you breathe, or just let the air fill and expand the lungs forward and back, up and down, left and right, and then drift out evenly from all directions. The shoulders slump and round, and then the next breath, expand and realign, sinking into their natural cradle in the shoulder blades and clavicle. Letting the spine stretch out and then rest back into the seat between each vertebrae. Letting the hands stretch and extend and then just curl to their relaxed state. All the bones and joints aligning. And letting that last breath out, coming back into our space. First, we start to turn off our intention and even some of our attention just by forming a technique and following it repeatedly. And we reintroduce each connection with the breath, with the hands, the eyes, and the whole body here present in the space. As we restart our creative engine, as we reconnect with our breath and this form of expression here with the paper and the pencil or the pen, hitting a bit of a reset button to restart the day and hopefully give us that energy to approach anything we have to do today with calm and a bit of method and practice of our own mindful awareness, so we can bring that presence and attention as we form space around us and others to share in this experience. And if you've joined along live in the Zoom via Mindful Prat on Twitch, or following it later here on YouTube, I hope you're having a wonderful day and creating something interesting. Thank you, and draw well.